Hello and welcome again. In this video, I will continue my discussion of comparative advantage. And the example I'm about to give you is actually one of my favorite examples in this class. And actually not just in this class, one of my favorite examples. It shows that by cooperating with a potentially weaker teammate, you can still potentially come out with a better outcome than just by doing the work yourself. For example, I'm a long distance runner, so let's say my personal best is 1 hour 43 minutes on a half marathon. Right? Someone who runs faster than I, someone who would run 1 hour 30, may still benefit of entering the race as a team. For example, that person would run the first 18 kilometers, and I would then just run 3. I can sustain that pace for 3 kilometers. So, of course, cooperating with a stronger player, that is clearly advantageous. But this example, and the reason why I like it, is cooperating with a weaker player sometimes makes sense as well. So, and again, what's behind it? Behind it is the concept of comparative advantage. Let's say that we have two firms. We have firm AAA and firm BBB. So firm AAA is a AAA credit rated firm, pretty much the top credit rating that you can have. BBB is, it's still okay, but clearly not nearly as good as AAA. And they have two options. They can borrow in a fixed rate market. Firm A can borrow at 4%, and firm B can borrow at 5.2%. Obviously, the cost of borrowing for firm AAA will be a lot lower. This has a better credit rating and can raise capital at a significantly lower cost. Now, what about the floating rate? And let's say the AAA can borrow at LIBOR minus 0.1%, and BBB can borrow at LIBOR plus 0.6. Now, what does that mean? I don't want to go too deep down this rabbit hole. LIBOR is London Interbank Offered Rate. It's the main worldwide benchmark interest rate. So basically, it's variable, obviously it moves, it's floating. If AAA wants to borrow, it will have to pay LIBOR minus 0.1%, 10 basis points. BBB, of course, has to pay LIBOR and a little bit of extra. So let's look at the absolute advantage. Firm AAA can borrow in both fixed and floating rate markets at a lower cost than BBB. But what about comparative advantage? Here, the difference is 1.2 percentage points. So firm AAA can raise capital at 1.2 percentage points lower than BBB. Here, however, the difference is only 0.7%. So, yes, firm BBB is worse at both, but it's not quite as bad in the floating rate market. So, comparative advantage is actually here. What do we do? These firms, well, okay, first of all, in order for comparative advantage to actually materialize, right, you have to want what the other person has. So in my previous video, we talked about rice and lamb. Again, for this trade to eventuate, China has to want New Zealand lamb, and New Zealand has to want Chinese rice. If we don't want each other's products, then, well, there is comparative advantage or not, it's irrelevant. So AAA has to want to borrow in a floating rate market, and triple B has to want to borrow in a market in which it has no comparative advantage. Let me block this out for a second. Think of it this way. Let's say I want to borrow in Argentina. I want to borrow Argentinian peso. I do not know anyone there. I don't have the language. I don't speak the language. I don't have any connections. And let's say someone in Argentina wants to borrow New Zealand dollars. Instead of us going to respective countries and sort of trying to figure it out, what we're going to do, I will borrow in New Zealand. My counterpart will borrow in Argentina, and we swap. We enter a swap. So this is that example that I've just given. It makes a lot of intuitive sense, but it's a lot more difficult to present on a board like this because it involves the exchange rate. Here, everything is in New Zealand dollars. So we have a AAA and we have triple B. Okay. So instead of borrowing in a floating rate market in which AAA wants to borrow, it borrows in the market in which it does indeed have a comparative advantage. So they will pay 4.0%. So arrow out, meaning that the payment comes out. This firm here will pay LIBOR plus 0.06. And then they enter what is called a plain vanilla interest rate swap. Plain vanilla in financial markets means that there are no extra features, nothing funny happening, just a straight out swap contract. It's one of the most traded, if not the most traded instruments out there. And I hope that in just a couple of minutes, I will convince you as for why. So, AAA will pay triple B LIBOR, and in exchange, triple B will pay back 4.35%. Now, do not worry how I got these numbers. It's a bit of an acquired skill of how to design these swaps. It's actually not terribly difficult at all, but just for now, take my word for it. This is how the swap is going to work. So let's step back and see, okay. So what's happening here? What has AAA accomplished in this swap? So they pay. So AAA pays, arrow out, 4.0%. It also pays LIBOR, and it receives 4.35%. So pays, arrow out, receives, arrow in. So what's their total? What's the total cash flow here? Well, let's just simply sum it up. 4% will cancel out. It pays LIBOR minus 0.35%. Beautiful. Look, without the swap, it would have paid this much. With the swap, it has reduced its cost of borrowing by 0.25%, by 25 basis points. Okay, so firm AAA has come out better off. Did they do that at the expense of firm BBB? Maybe they got screwed over in all this transactions. So again, similarly, let's look from BBB's perspective. So it pays LIBOR plus 0.06, it pays 4.35 and it receives LIBOR. Again, let's add it all up. LIBOR will cancel out, going out, going in. So the total it pays 4.95%, 4.35 plus 0.06. It has also reduced its cost of borrowing. Both companies have come out better off. AAA was able to reduce this cost of borrowing in the floating rate market from this to this by 0.25 percentage point. Triple B was able to reduce its cost of borrowing in the fixed rate market by, well, not coincidentally, actually, there is some computation behind it, by also by 0.25%. So, two main takeaways. Both companies are better off. And look, on the face value of it, Triple B has nothing to offer AAA. It's worse at everything. But, well, guess what? Even by potentially cooperating with a potentially weaker player, a stronger player can still come out ahead. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you in the next video.